ink being made, okay? So what we're going to do with our time this morning before we have lunch is actually get a chance to see what you can actually do with this ink, okay? Some people in here have told me they're watercolor, they work with watercolor, maybe just work with dry media. We do encaustics here, which is wax painting, acrylics, oil, all that. This drawing ink goes across the medias, okay? So even if you're sitting there thinking, well, I would probably not use this, when we're done, you might find that you might be interested in using it for whatever media you're using, or that you do, okay? So the very first thing I want to start out by saying is, and this is a misconception, and maybe I'm not sure what was told downstairs, okay? So if I repeat, just so you know, but there are no walnuts in walnut drawing ink. Tom Norton walnut drawing ink, okay? If your friend tells you that they give you a bottle of walnut drawing ink that they made on their kitchen stove all weekend long, there's probably walnuts in that, okay? This one has no walnuts. What this one is this is a pigmented ink, okay, of imported pigment, proprietary, okay? It's a pigmented ink, and the advantage of it not being made with the walnuts is, one, we get the walnut color, okay? And the walnut color is the color that the old artists, the old masters, when they were doing their drawings and their ink drawings and their grisailles and all that, they were using walnut ink, but they were using it made from the walnuts because obviously they didn't have this, right? So the advantage is that you are getting the color that they used of that beautiful color of walnut, but you're not getting the acidity, okay? So whatever your substrate is that you're going to apply this to, it's not going to be eating away at it. And in the old days, the walnut ink was a rich, dark black color, but over time it faded into this beautiful color, okay? And what were you saying, that you could put it up to the light, though, and see the pinpricks where the walnut acidity had eaten through, okay? So the advantage of having today and having us here in Rochester making this is that the acidity is not there. So you can kind of trust that you'll be able to, have some archival quality to it like that, okay? The other thing I wanted to talk about today is, like I said, you can use this in all different media, okay? As a drawing, if you were doing a grisaille, does everybody know what a grisaille is? When you're doing an oil painting and before you get into the actual painting of it, you do a drawing so you can get your tonal values and all that. A lot of times you can use the ink to make that drawing and get your darks and your lights and all your tones set before you go in with your color, okay? So you can use it for something like that. I'm going to show you how, I've played around with this because I'm kind of a mixed media. I like mixed media. I don't know how many people here are into mixed media, but I kind of think outside of the box. I'm kind of one of those people who will throw together a whole bunch of stuff and just see what happens. So you can stencil with it. It acts as a watercolor too, okay? So it's you can use it if anybody does watercolor where you're layering. You're going with watercolor. You start with light and you keep building up your dark areas. That's what this walnut ink will do. I'm also going to show you how, like a watercolor, what's really cool about this ink is you can lift it out. So if you make a mistake and you're like, I hate that, I will show you, this is one I did a while ago on a piece of watercolor paper, and it's not anything beautiful or a masterpiece, but it was just me playing around. And I hated the whole right side of her eye after I'd done all this work, and I literally took a Bounty paper towel, wet it, and just cleaned it right off, and it came up to white. And we're going to see some of that today. So that's a big advantage to having something, an ink that will do that. We also have, so it comes in the regular, like this, which everybody has in front of them, and the darkening medium, okay? The darkening medium is the same thing, just more heavily pigmented, uses the same binder, okay? What I say about this is like, you can get pretty dark with this, okay? With the darkening medium, the analogy I use is, when I've gone to, say, Cheesecake Factory or somewhere out to dinner, and you get that little sliver of chocolate cheesecake, and it's real thin, and you think, it's really thin, there's not enough there, and then you start biting into it, and you find you can hardly even finish it. It's because it's so rich, there's so much jam-packed in there. That's what this is. A little of this goes a long way to just punch and push the darks when you really need it. So you'll see today as we're playing in some of the examples, You can go pretty far with this, but we have added this to the line. This, I don't know how much you told them about Tom Norton. Did you talk about that at all?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. Tom Norton, this has been around in the art supply world for a while. Tom Norton Walnut Drawing Ink. There is a man named Tom Norton. He looks like Einstein. Okay, he literally looks like Einstein. We were at a show out in California. He was with us, being our demonstrator of this. And we went out to a restaurant that night, and we were all just kind of hanging around having a drink. And a person actually came right up to us and said to Tom, "You look like you're incredibly smart. Are you a scientist?" And Tom said, "No, I'm an artist." And the guy actually said, "I thought you were smart."
Wow.
Anyway, Tom has wild hair, looks like Einstein. And when he was in college as an art student, they had an ink that he was using that he loved that did all of this. And then later on in the years, right, he tried to actually find that same ink, and he couldn't get it anymore. So he actually decided to make it himself. That's why it's called Tom Norton Walnut Drawing Ink. And then I guess over time, friends wanted it and all that. So it became something that he started to sell and actually put out there on the market. And then recently, in the last couple of years, he was getting ready to retire, and Mike had gotten to know him, and so we acquired that, and that's how we have it now. So here in Rochester, in Western New York, is this? It's been around for a long time, and it's pretty well known. If you say it, people will say, "Oh yeah, I have a bottle of that." I don't think a lot of people use it to the capacity that they can, given all the different things you can do with it.
Yeah.
Is everybody following me with this now? Yeah. Good. Okay, so we are going to play with our stuff. Did I miss anything that you wanted me to say?
No, I think you got it.
Okay.
One of the funniest things about Tom Norton is he's in his 70s, and everybody in the art supply industry that makes stuff wants to sell things to Dick Blick because they're so big. I mean, they've got 186 stores, largest online site. They contacted him and says, "We want to buy your ink." He says, "Okay, we need a pallet." "I'm not making a pallet of it. No way, I'm not going to do this." And you go, how am I going to box it up? And he goes, "Well, we really want your ink. We really want your ink." I go, "Who tells Dick Blick this, Because when you got a store around the corner from me, I can drop off a case every now and then and let them make a pallet. Because that'd be great. So, so we're in every Blick store.
Yes,
we're 186 stores.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, here's a guy who's like turning it away. He's like, how?
Right. And that's why when Sandy came up that Saturday, which was a busy Saturday anyway,
Oh my God, yes.
And I said to her, "It's not a sleepy place here. I mean, we've got our retail store downstairs, but there's a lot going on, and that's not even touching the encaustic wax painting, that we make here too, the wax paint for encausticos." So anyway, let's get into this, since we'll get started, and then we are going to play. But let me just explain what you've got in front of what I've got in front of me, and some of what you've got in front of you. So you've got the regular walnut ink, and then you have the darkening medium in the little one. Okay. In the little container here is distilled water. Okay, and the reason it's distilled is to take that water doesn't have any impurities in it. So we've already talked about the quality of this ink, and we talked about the low acidity and all that. Our tap water has things in it that we don't know about or what have you. So the distilled water helps to actually keep it pure. Okay, so that's going to be in the little container there, and then the big one is just our sort of wash water. At one of the shows when Tom was demonstrating, and Tom was sitting there and he was kind of involved in what was going on, and people were sort of playing. People were thinking that the wash water after a while was the ink because it had gotten that color. I have found that the wash water doesn't have the distilled, but you'll see when you use it that it's a very diluted form of the ink in a way, because you'll see it when you dip your brush in. And then I just want to explain real quick before I show you some examples and we start doing some stuff. What I have found when Mike said to me, "Hey, play with this stuff and see what you can do," the very first thing, obviously, I did was a round brush, right? Let's just see the traditional stuff that I can do by taking a round brush, dipping it in, moving it around, and playing with it. We also have something, what is this called? Avalon, Mike?
Yes.
Avalon, okay. Yeah, everybody's going to get one of these. This is like a cloth tissue thing that you can actually reuse and reuse and reuse. Once this gets the ink in it when we're doing the blotting, then we can rinse it out, and it'll literally rinse out and get a lot of use out of this as opposed to a paper towel. I have, like I said, on this one I didn't have the Avalon, so this was just, Bounty paper towel was good enough to get it out. But this little thing, which everybody's going to get a chance to use one of these today, this is really kind of cool too. So we'll have that.
It doesn't fall apart. You want to give pills.
It doesn't fall apart.
like
Exactly.
paper
It's
towels.
not. It's like a cloth in a way, but
Can you buy something like that downstairs?
Yes,
Yeah.
we have this. Yep. So the first thing I did was the round brush, just traditional. Okay. What I said, okay, well, what else? Ink. Okay, a calligraphy pen, right? So it works well with that. Started to explore, well, you know what, the round brush I have to keep dipping. We have these cool things called water brushes. I don't know if anybody's aware or has a water brush, right? The water brush is kind of neat because you put the ink in the water brush. Now you can, go ahead and you constantly can read, it's all there, okay? So that's another option. We have something by Molotow, a pump marker. And this one here has kind of like a chisel line tip on it. And we filled this with the ink. This is actually refillable too. And that gives a whole nother option for drawing a line with the ink. And what we found is, these are the tips where the ink is coming through and the pigment is not getting caught. It's actually fine enough that it's coming through and we're being able to use it. And I have examples of all of this. Bamboo reed pens to dip, Hunt pen, quill pen. Okay, and another water brush that has a longer brush on the end, and so holds a lot more. And I have an example I'll show you of how I use this to do it. Then what I started to do, because of course I like to play and add a lot of things, and I'm sort of out of the box person. I just have like a we have all this downstairs, a Winsor Newton watercolor marker, because this acts like a watercolor. So you can add a brown, this is a brown or a sepia in, and work with the tools that you might have or some of the things you have at home. Sepia micron marker. When you're all done and you might want to add some things, some drawn things in, if you're really into that kind of stuff, you can do that. Faber-Castell marker. So
About
those
the
are some
drawing
of the,
stick. You got a drawing stick?
yeah, and then the drawing stick. Yeah, I like the drawing stick. And then the Tom Norton Walnut Ink drawing stick. Okay. This, when Tom was in school as a beginner, his teacher said to him, went out and got a bunch of sticks outside, just twigs, and brought them in and gave them to the class and said, this is what I want you to draw with, these twigs. We are so used to reaching for these tools that are sort of pre-made for us and thinking of them as the art tools that we went out and we had to buy. That forced the students to make lines that they were unfamiliar with, because who knew what the twig was going to do. Mm-hmm. And so that opened up a whole nother, like in your mind, it kind of opens it up for us to think outside of what I already know pretty much what this calligraphy pen is going to do. I can do different things with it, but I sort of know what a calligraphy pen is going to do with this thing. But with a twig, I don't. And so, so Tom came up with this walnut drawing stick. On one end, it's a very crude, rough nib, like you would find, so a dip nib. And on the other end is a felt tip, kind of like what's in your piano, right? And so between these two, you can make marks. I have a sample of just a small little vignette drawing done only with this. And the thing is, it forces you to think, what is this tool going to do? What can I do with this tool? And almost push yourself to say, I'm going to let this tool show me what I can do, as opposed to trying to say, I'm going to make this happen with this. Does that make sense? Mm. So that's another thing. We sell these downstairs. We make these. I don't know if you saw them being made, and we have those downstairs too. So let me just show you a few things before I do a demo on the paper. Of some of the things, and I'll pass these around. Of some of the things that you can do. So I showed you this was one of the first things that I did with a round brush, right? Just kind of doing we'll start over here. Just kind of pass it around, a portrait kind of thing.